Hello all. Welcome to Shapeshifters, how Corsets did the trick. You're in for a treat if you've never been to a class with Marcie Cooperman. If you have been to a class before Marcie Cooperman, you know you're in for a treat. We always are happy to welcome back Marcie. She offers a variety of classes in the subject area: fashion, design, color theory, interior design, fine art. She teaches life seen through the lens of fashion at school, such as Parsons School of Design, which is in right now, and probably carrying a heavy load there at Parsons. So we thank you for making time for us, this fall here. So I hope you're in for a treat. So get ready and Marcie, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Maurice. So I see we have Carmela and Naomi. And Carmela, thanks for putting your camera on. You can unmute because we have such a small class. And Naomi, if you could put on your camera, that would be great. You can unmute also. And, I'd like to have a back and forth interchange. And if you're interested at all, you can ask questions at any moment. Just ask. I'll hear you. I'll stop talking. And it would be really, I think, more energetic and delightful. Does that sound good to the both of you? What do you think, Carmela? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. And how about you, Naomi? Does that sound like you'd like to do that?
I mean, that's fine. I just might be actually eating my dinner, in which case I'll turn off the camera. You don't want to see it.
Okay. Okay, but feel free to talk at any point, ask questions or comments or anything. So it's really very nice to have that kind of energy when we have a small class. So I really find this fascinating, this whole concept of corsets. And really, I widened the thought, not just from corsets, but I widened it to all sorts of things that women have been wearing in the past almost like 600 years to change how we look, how our body look, to conform our bodies to fashion. And it's along the way, I'm not only going to talk about corsets, but also things to change the skirt, the width of the skirt, the bustles, the shoulders, the arms, and anything that we thought was fashionable. The question is always, why did we do that to ourselves? So I always have that question in my head. And some of these things are actually really funny. And so we'll start, and I'll show you the little secrets to how they made the dresses look like that. And if there were any TV shows that you saw along the way, like Bridgerton or The Gilded Age, and you wondered how they got their dresses to look like that, you'll see exactly what the answer is. So we'll start. So that's one of the very first corsets that women ever started wearing. And the reason we sort of moved into this kind of thing was, of course, because we wanted a small waist. We wanted to get rid of our nasty little rolls or anything that stuck out and make our bodies look as beautiful as possible. And there were certain fashionable shapes, and we wanted to make our bodies conform to those. So these are the first, and they kind of push the bust up. They flatten the bust and push it up, and they have what we call boning in them. So you can see the diagonal lines. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see the cursor? Carmela? No. Okay. What if I move it to here? Do you see the cursor now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we see it now.
Okay, so this is the screen, the magic screen. So follow the cursor. You see the diagonal lines there, and especially that center front line. There's actually bone, it's whale bone in there. And then centuries later, they put metal in there. So very, very hard materials. Yeah, so you can imagine how you had to be very upright when you wore something like that. It really forced you to do that.
Gives me looking at it.
Yeah, it's painful just to look at it, I know. So this is how it looked in 1540, wearing one of those corsets. It's flattening out the breasts. If you were small, that's great. If you were not small, it's like, I can't even imagine how that must feel. And a very straight front. So that was the fashion then. And we have some old paintings we can look at to see how they look. This is another look where all of that corsetry goes under the breast, just covering the nipple, so it sort of flattens you but pushes you up a little bit and gives you a little bit of a sexy look. And this is, just in case you're interested and you wanted more information, this is one of the websites that I use. And there were some quotes on there that I really liked. So I apologize for having an all text slide. I usually don't like to do that, but it was so interesting. They call these, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. They call the bones that they put inside in those diagonal lines, they call them stays. And they have something called, there were some fashions that allowed you to not wear the corset, like if you were pregnant, but if you were not pregnant and you didn't wear something fashionable like a corset, people started thinking you were pregnant because everybody wore it. So, or you just looked slovenly, or certainly your morals were lax. So you really had to keep up. That's a lot of social pressure to keep up, not wearing this robe baton. And then there's this poem, and I had to put that line in 1762, describes a woman now a neat shape in stays, now a slattern in dumps. Dumps meaning there's no boning. It's sort of like a corset with no boning. So then, and you absolutely were a slattern if you wore that. So also, in addition to the corset, this thing called the farthingale started coming into fashion, and you can see the horizontal hoops, and it made the skirt wide. So the hoops were made of cane, which is a kind of wood that's very lightweight, and they could make it wet and then turn it into circles like that. So it made the skirt a little bit wider, but this is way back in 1475. And that's what it looked like. After a while, they began to realize they didn't have to put them on the outside skirt. They could put it on an undergarment, and you wear that under your skirt, your beautiful fabric on the outside, and this on the inside. So it stiffens the farthingale, and they called it bent rope. And it's actually a rope made out of grass, bent grass, and it's a little bit more flexible than the original cane. And then a little later on in 1580, that's when they began to use whalebone, so literally bone, which was a little thicker.
I presume only rich people wore these things?
I'm sorry, say that again. It's
I
hard to hear.
presume only rich people?
Yes, that's exactly one of the points that I'm going to make. Only rich people, because this is very expensive and the fabrics are very expensive. And, people who were not rich, they had work to do. And these were a little constricting and didn't allow you to get your work done. So this is still back in 1545, and the farthingale started in Spain, and then this is about the time where we begin to see it in England. There's Catherine de Medici, that's in the 1550s. So, she's wearing a farthingale, and she's also wearing a corset. And they had different kinds of gowns. Here they call it an English gown because the upper sleeves were boned. That's how they stuck up. Like it looks like a puff on the shoulder, but there's boning in there, making it stick up. And there's Queen Elizabeth, one of the Queen Elizabeths in 1563, and she's wearing a French gown over a French farthingale. And the reason it's called a French farthingale is because now you begin to see the padding on the hips getting a little thicker, and the padding was made out of wool, and it was a big fat roll across the hips. And then we saw rolls, men and women had them in their sleeves. So you see their arms are getting to look a little fat, and the hip part's getting even wider. In a minute, I'll show you a picture of the undergarment that they're wearing that makes it look like that. So, and here's the point that that you made, Carmela, and I think it was it Carmela or Naomi? Yes, the wealthy wore them, but not the commoners and merchants, and we already found out why, because they just had work to do. So this is what a farthingale looks like. This is the undergarment, and it's actually a wheel that goes all around the body at the hip line. And then you can see the sleeve farthingales wear very stiff boning that makes it very high in the shoulders and then all the way down the arms, very stiff material. And then there's also the diagonal lines in the corset part. So there's boning everywhere in somebody's body. And that's what it would look like in the dress. That's Queen Elizabeth in 1590. So she's got a French farthingale, so she's got that padding on her hips, and she has farthingale sleeves, so she's got padding and boning on her shoulders. And gradually they began to come up with other ways to make that padding on the hips. Instead of big fat pads, they actually had a wheel. So this is what the wheel farthingale looked like. And the one on the right has not only the wheel, but padding under it, just for good measure. And that would be worn with a corset. So you can see the stays in the corset make it very stiff. And it's tied, the one on the right at least has an adjustment up at the shoulder, so you could tie it and make it a little looser if you were taller. And that's what it looked like. It got wider and wider and wider at the hip. So in 1605, that's how it looked with wheel farthingales. And then it got so wide, they started sticking out sometimes 6 feet wide from one end to the other, which I think made it pretty hard to get into a doorway. So the doorways in the big castles had to be widened to make sure it allowed for women to go in gracefully. And so you can see it's called a pannier. That's a hoop petticoat, which is a garment. All of these are undergarments they wore under their very beautiful fabric dresses. And that's how it looked on the outside. So this is Queen Sophia Magdalena of Denmark in 1765. And her dresses were 12 feet long from one hip to the other, 12 feet long. And from front to back, 2 feet deep. So just imagine walking around with all of that, the weight of it on you. And, you know, think about sitting down, just what that would have been.
Really doing anything.
Doing anything, I know. And look at these got even wider. I mean, absolutely insane. It's like the width of 4 people, but it was the style, and very expensive to make gowns like this because it just used so much fabric. It's another reason why the commoners were not going to be wearing this kind of thing. I mean, who had the money?
Have they survived these samples?
Yeah, this is Queen Sophia Magdalena's dresses. They're probably in the Victoria and Albert Museum. Well, I don't know actually where these are, but that, I don't know if you've ever gone there. It's in London. It's the absolute best costume museum in the world. It's just wonderful. So, yep, they survived. These are 600 years old. That's the pannier and a corset from that time period. The pannier being the very wide thing that goes around the hips under your dress, and then the corset in front. That's another one. That's how it looked from the front and from the back. So, and all of these are undergarments that survived also, and they look pretty clean. Amazing how clean they look. And then you see the bottom has beautiful pleats. It's actually a beautiful garment. And they had embroidery, and they had little delicate, it's a lot of white, but little delicate pink embroidery on top of it. So it's quite lovely. And that's Marie Antoinette's wedding dress. And that is in the Victoria and Albert Museum. And she was 14 years old when she wore this. And on the dress, there are diamonds, and her pannier was like 12 feet wide. She had tons of fabric, and she also had the corset along with the wide pannier. So just a beautiful dress. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of all this, the styles changed, and it was no longer about a pannier. It's now the round gown. And so this is the very end of the 1700s, 1798, has a higher waist and sort of the beginnings of the concept of a bustle in the back, but they didn't actually call it a bustle. It just was gathered fabric in the back, and moving towards something that was going to happen in the 1800s to give an umpire look to the dress. So at the time, this is what the corsets were like, and then the jumps. So a jump is the one like on the bottom. The yellow is a jump. It doesn't have boning in it, and the corset is the one on the top. And the jumps were considered healthier alternatives, but of course they were morally not impeccable. And that's another one. And of course, you had to pull the strings as tight as possible. There's a couple more. So they began to change shape around this time where the round gown came out, and they called it a prow front. It begins to angle forward. So when you see the side view, that pink one, you can see how it goes down in the front. It's higher on the side at the very top of the corset. It goes down around the top of the breast, and the whole thing is pushed forward. And at this time, the waistline was getting higher, so the bottom of the corset was moving up. So you see all those diagonal lines, they're all very hard stays. They're stays. So when you put that on, that part of your body was not moving. But the waistline, because the waistline is moving up, now the waistline itself was actually exposed. And they began to make those stays out of a little bit of a softer material. And this is a new development. They actually started thinking, oh, well, maybe we could have the idea of the breast as two things instead of one big monobosom, which, briefly we had two things and the monobosom came back. But you can see there are gathers in the fabrics, and on each side there are like two cups. It's sort of maybe a proto bra beginning where they begin to think of maybe the woman's shape as opposed to just fashion. Still here, we begin to see that. So support for the breasts underneath and allowing them to not be pressed so hard. And also these things are pretty short. And the one on the right, 1805, is really short. It really looks like a bra, but they didn't quite have it yet. They weren't quite thinking that way. Then they had things like this, which I only saw one picture of this. Most women didn't really wear that. And there's like maybe a proto bra. It actually looks like it would be comfortable, and it doesn't have any stays in it. It doesn't have any heavy boning or support. And it looks like this in a dress. So that is a white muslin gown. The muslin comes from India, and it's cotton muslin. A very big difference from what the fabrics were before. And you see it's an empire look. So that means the waistline is all the way up as high as it can go, right under the breasts. But the breasts were still supported, and they look like this. So it's a long line corset. There still was a corset. There still were the stays. That one in the front, that one, here, I'll use there it is. There's my cursor. That was still a hard material, like whalebone or caning or something. But under the dress, it didn't look like you had anything on there. And here is, oops, skip one. Oh, so that's a portrait of Josephine in 1801. And this, have you seen these people?
I've never seen them.
Did you ever see that show Bridgerton?
No, I don't think I saw that one.
Oh, it was on a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it took place in the early 1800s, and these are the empire gowns that they were wearing, and at the time the people who referred to gowns like that were calling them boobs on a tube because they're straight, their bodies were perfectly straight, and just a little bit of allowance for the breasts at the top. So this is the kinds of corsets they were wearing during that time period. They have the one on the very far right is during the period when Napoleon was ruling, and Josephine was wearing a corset like that. And the ones on the left are a little bit later, so they're just a little bit softer in the breasts. And then there are these. They're just all different kinds of very still supported very much in the front with the whalebone, but a little softer at the breast. There's a picture of Josephine's coronation in her beautiful gown, and it's very different from Marie Antoinette's gown. If you think about that one, you know, with the wide pannier hips that were 12 feet wide, and the gold and the diamonds on the dress. And this dress is a tube, slim, straight up and down, and very, very high waist. It's an empire waist because this is the Empire period in France. Another picture of what women look like. It looked like they were wearing their nightgowns. To us, it looks like that, and that they didn't have any support. But of course they did. We know what was really underneath it. And gradually that gave way to the Regency period, where still it's empire, the waistline is empire, but the fabrics began changing, and it wasn't just that muslin. Here, this is a little jacket, and it's called a Spencer jacket, and it's an empire, so it just goes to the bottom of the breasts. And then this is what made the big change. In 1806, Napoleon said, that's it. All women had to wear only French materials. No more muslin from India, no more cotton. And all the designers were forced to use silk and the old style fabrics that they were using before, which were much heavier than the muslin. And then that empire waist just disappeared. It was there for about 10 years. And you know, the freedom that women had from wearing very heavy boning in their corset, it all went away. And they were back to stiffer French fabrics and corsets again. So now the sleeves are becoming important, and there are lots of padding options and boning that go into the sleeves. And the sleeves, this is now the 1820s, and through the 1820s, 1830s, the sleeves get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's a painting there of people, a family, a wealthy family, in the 1830s, and that's about as wide as sleeves can get. Here's another picture in 1836. It's called a leg of mutton sleeve, and it just couldn't get any wider. And you see that little white thing on the right side here.
Yes.
So it ties on the upper arm, and it ties just above the elbow, and it's hoops of boning that keep it sticking out. And that's another option. Instead of boning, it could have just been a puff, a big puff that you wore on your arms. And then women started wearing petticoats like this. This is an undergarment that they would wear under their dress. So you see it's got the boning in the sleeves, at the top part of the sleeves. And it had cording in there, cording and boning. So it just to make sure the sleeves really stuck out. And in the front, the center front, which is here, I'll use my cursor again, there's a pocket. And they call that a slot, and they put a busk in there. The busk that's whalebone or a piece of, sometimes it was paperboard. At least if it was paperboard, it was not as stiff as whalebone. And it goes all the way down, covering the stomach, because of course we wanted to flatten our stomachs. So there it is. That's how it looks when it goes all the way down, covering your stomach. You can see that right in the center, going all the way down. You can see the pocket where the boning is. And now something is developing. You can see the shape changing. So the difference now is it's becoming an hourglass shape. And there's still the busk in the center front. And it holds a heavy piece of boning in the center still. That never really went away. And then you can see the diagonal lines, and corsets now are becoming beautiful. They're not just those white cotton muslin ones. They have this decoration with embroidery, these little arrows. They call that flossing, little embroidery patterns. And they're there actually to hold the boning in place. The embroidery stitches go around the boning and keep it from moving. So you see them at the top and then at the bottom, and then also at the bottom, at the very hip bottom of the boning. And then there's one in the center of the bust in the very middle of the garment. So now corsets are becoming lovely. I'm sorry, Naomi, did you want to say something?
These were undergarments?
Yes, these are undergarments. Yeah. So women were actually taking pride in wearing them. And that's why we didn't see this embroidery before, but we started to see it. And we started to see beautiful colors and beautiful fabrics going to the corsets and a little bit of lace. You can see this one has little lace on the top. So this is 1835, the very, very, very wide sleeves. And the thing that happened then was the shoulders were not covered. This actually is a thing that covers the shoulders. Let me move this away. So it's white. It's a collar around the neck, and then it's these little triangles that go over the shoulders. And it's capelet that's called a pelerine. It's worn over the shoulders, and then I think I showed you a photo a couple slides back where actually the shoulders were not covered at all. So this way for the winter, you could cover them and keep warm, but it looks like they're actually not covered. And then all of a sudden the styles changed, no more cushioning in the shoulders, and the sleeves became really, really, really tight and really straight. And they were so straight that women could barely bend their elbows. But, you know, that's what you do for fashion. So at the time, this is what the corset looked like. It still had that channel in the front, and the bust was steel or whalebone, just like it was before. And a little bit of gathers at the breast. This is what I would expect a corset to look like from 1840, because, you know, well worn. I'm amazed that some of them were so beautiful and not yellowed like this is, because the fabric just kind of yellows from the oils of the skin getting on it. But it's very possible that these wealthy women had so many, they didn't even wear most of them. And so the oils of the skin didn't get on them, and that's why they're still with us today. And then I thought you'd like this photograph of what these women look like. I think they were afraid to smile because the camera maybe would take away their personhood or something.
They all look the same.
I know, don't they? They look like the same woman. And the mouth, look at the mouth.
They look like they have the same face.
Yeah, they do. Maybe it's a family. They have the same eyes, the same hair. Yep. So they're actually wearing they're all wearing corsets, and these dresses look like corsets, but they are just a covering. They don't have boning in them. I don't think they have boning in them, but it's possible that they do, and they have double layers of boning and a high neck, and it looks like the sleeves loosened up for a little bit for these ladies. But that's an example of the tight sleeves. So the women could not raise their arms above 90 degrees. So just imagine walking around like that. You know, your arm is just like parallel to the floor, and that's all you can do. And by then, women were wearing 6 to 7 heavy petticoats. 6 to 7. I'm not sure exactly why so many, but they had to wear an under petticoat, and then that would maybe keep the boning on your petticoat from scratching your body. Then they had to have a cover over the petticoat, and then possibly they had to have a couple other petticoats with more boning in them. So I mean, I can't explain 6 to 7. But then this thing appeared called bloomers, named after Amelia Bloomer, who was campaigning for women's rights. I don't think that he is the one who invented the bloomers, but women started exploring ways that they could have a little freedom from all this heavy clothing. So bloomers separated the skirt into two. You could ride your bicycle with them, and you could exercise, maybe play tennis, you know, and be able to move around. So it was named after her because she was campaigning for women's rights. So what I find really fascinating was that at the same time that women started campaigning for women's rights and the right for suffrage, which means the right to vote, they didn't get it in 1851, but they started campaigning for it in 1851, around that time. Also, clothing for women started lightening up a little bit, which has a lot to do with freedom of movement. So here's what the bloomers looked like. So of course there was a skirt, but it was pretty short considering what it had looked like before. It was a tunic now. Still wearing corsets, but now you've got the bloomers underneath. But men didn't like them because, you know, it's all about men. So men felt that women were attempting to reverse the power of the sexes so that the men would no longer be on top. And there's a cartoon, the results of bloomerism. The ladies were the ones popping the question to the man. That was going to be, that's the reversing of the power of the sexes. So that was about the worst thing that they could imagine. So meanwhile, corsets were absolutely beautiful. Look at this gorgeous blue silk fabric. And you see the flossing there, the little points, the little beige gray points at the bottom and the top of some of the channels, embroidery flossing. And a new invention came, and this is a cage crinoline. And this was in the late 1850s, so it eliminated the need for all those petticoats. So I imagine they had to have so many petticoats to make their skirts really wide. But then they had this, which was just like, it's called a cage because it looks like a cage, and it actually could push together. If you put it down, you know, on the floor, it'll just crumple down together, but like an accordion. But when you pick it up, it opens up, and all the little tiny boning pieces were held together by tape. And this was around 1860 when skirts were just about their widest point, which is during the time of the Civil War. So this is what some undergarments look like. This is a cage crinoline. Again, if you took it off her body and put it on the floor, it would crumple up into a flat thing. And you see one cage on the bottom, and it's covered by the orange fabric, and another cage at the top around the hips. And you notice something happening here around the back. It's beginning to puff out in her back, making something that later they started calling the bustle. And at this time, it was just emphasizing a part of the body that men thought should be larger on women. Yep. And so this is what the dresses looked like in 1864 during the time of the Civil War. They were super wide on the bottom, not really a bustle yet, but lots and lots and lots of heavy draped fabric. And then I know you're going to know what this stuff is. So you know that movie? Yes? All right, do you know what's next? You know it's going to come next. What's going to come next?
Well, this picture, yes, it reminds me of this Carol Burnett.
Yes, Carol Burnett went with the wind.
That was hilarious.
Was that not the funniest scene you've ever seen? Wasn't that the best? Yes. So she said, I
never forget this. It was so funny.
I saw something in the window and I had to have it, she said. So of course she's got the curtain rods and the drapery fringe, which the original one did not have.
Right.
And it had, I like the sleeve. It had one wide sleeve on the right and narrow sleeve on the left. I never noticed, but there it is. And she made herself a little bag.
And, you know, she looks like she's wearing drapery, really, when you think about it. And
yeah,
drapery, you could take your drapes down and make a dress out of it.
Yeah. And then, of course, the cords and the tassels, they're from the draperies. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just brilliant. And her hat, she made a little hat. And she looks wonderful. And she looks wonderful.
Yes, they were both wonderful. They really were.
Yeah, they were the best.
That was a great film, and the skit was wonderful too.
Yeah.
This, oh my goodness.
The only skit that might have been funnier was the dentist scene. You know, remember the dentist?
I'm not sure.
With Tim Conway. He was doing it for the first time, and he was working on the other guy who I'm blocking on his name.
Harvey Korman.
Yeah, Harvey Korman. He was working on Harvey Korman, and he had a needle, and he kept stabbing himself with the needle of Novocaine. So just physical comedy. You should just Google it.
For some
Sure.
reason. Oh,
Oh, it's so funny. You should Google it and look it up.
sure it is.
Of
And
course.
we did see it. I just,
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube.
yes,
So,
I watched the old Carol Burnett skits. They're
yeah,
wonderful.
me too. They were really fabulous. I think they were the precursor to everything we see on Laugh-In and Saturday Night Live today. You remember Laugh-In?
Of course.
What was that?
Laugh-In, it was on in the 60s.
For some reason, I'm having trouble understanding everything.
Laugh-In. Maybe Laugh, Laugh, Laugh-In.
Oh, laughing, laughing. Oh,
Yeah.
who was in that?
Um,
Rowan something? Rowan and somebody laughing?
Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So Lily Tomlin, Goldie Hawn. I can't remember all the guys' names. A couple of guys who were really hysterical. I don't know. Something I can't bring it up right now because I'm mostly concerned with corsets. My brain is not really functioning. But again, do a little Googling on YouTube and you'll see the shows are actually very funny. Lily Tomlin was the one that I really remember. So anyway, around 1870, this is the bustle. It just came in. All of a sudden, it was a big thing. And you can see it's like 3 times the width of this woman's actual figure. And sorry?
It's huge.
Yes, it is really big. And so this is a lovely dinner dress. And of course, it takes lots of fabric and it's very expensive. And I'm sure the little tulips are handmade. So beautiful. Look at these gorgeous dresses. Just gorgeous. And lots of opportunity for draperies and laces and fringes and ruffles. And this is what the bustle looked like. There were many ways it could be made. So this is boning at the bottom of all of those hoops. Or it could have a great big cage crinoline on the bottom with the boning. You see the horizontal bones in them. And the top had another cage crinoline for the bustle part. And it's steel. The hoops were made out of steel in this case. This is an undergarment. So they weren't just boring white. They were actually quite beautiful with trim all around it in black.
It's very
Lovely. And then the natural form bustle came out. So we were seeing those super huge bustles and it changed to be almost slender. And the natural form was just like enhancing what nature gave you. So there it is. It's just a little bit in the back. That was in the 1870s, just until 1882. And there it is. This is what made it. It was a little bit of padding, like an apron you put on backwards, back on your back instead of your front. A little bit of boning, maybe like the one on the right is made out of boning, or cage, again, a cage. And you see there's a close-up of what it looks like. So the one on the right here, these are whale bones, and they're covered in fabric to soften them a little bit. But still, you can imagine how that might feel when you try to sit or you move, all this very hard stuff on your back. And it's held together with tapes. And this one just ties on around the waist.
And everyone had the same figure then. You could never tell what anyone really looked like because they all looked the same with the bustle and the.
They did, but I have to think that there were some women who were heavier, and
there were a few, not like today though, but I'm sure there were a few.
There had to be, and then we change as we get older, and we don't look like the little 18-year-olds who are very skinny. The students in my class, and they weigh, especially some of the Asian women are gorgeous, and they're like 2 fingers width.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've had babies and we've had maturity and we don't look like that anymore. So we change, our bodies change and we have to accommodate it. So they must have had the same situation back then, and it must have been a little hard. So, so it's steel, to wear steel bands to make your dress stick out, you know, very hard on the body.
Right.
So that's an issue, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes. So anyway, the natural form bustle was in, this is late 1800s, and all of a sudden a super huge bustle came out again, because I guess men couldn't keep away from it. And I don't know who designed it, but you know, we followed what men wanted. So the big bustle again in the late 1800s. And this is, I love this drawing, the various ways that makers of the bustle came up with to make that thing stick out. So there's steel, there's whale bone.
Brought it back in some way.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, I'm surprised that they haven't brought this idea back in some way. I mean, they still may get to it eventually. Something, you know, that will lead us. We used to wear crinolines when I was in high school. We wore
Yes,
three
yes,
crinolines to get our skirts out.
we
that came
did.
back briefly, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of these days they come out with this look.
That's a very good point. I would like to see it. I don't,
Plus, they come out with the puffy sleeves. In fact, I'm wearing a blouse today that has puffy sleeves.
yeah, but you don't have whale boning in it.
Yeah. So, you know, they bring things back every once in a while.
Yeah, so let's see. I'd be interested to see if this would actually come back in. It's the one thing I haven't seen. You know, all the old stuff comes in, but one thing I haven't seen was this.
That's true.
This
I
is
was
this is
surprised.
isn't this gorgeous?
Yeah, but you know, this is reminding me that some of the lingerie looks like this, like the camisoles that I have now, because I don't like to wear a bra with the wire in it. So I always want something without wire. So now they have these beautiful camisoles, and they
Mhm.
look very much like this. I mean, not exactly like this one, but the one
Yeah,
with the back, you know. Yeah.
yeah, not heavy boning. Yeah, that's very true. And at the very end of this presentation, I have Skims. The last picture, I think, is
Oh,
Skims.
right.
Yeah, so it's just fabric, and you know, men like to wear it too to pull in all of their little round parts. You know, whatever rolls we have, because we shrink, our spines shrink with age, and everything is still there. So if you were tall and slender, and then you shrink a little, it's got to go somewhere. So you know, we can push it together with Skims. It's just a taut fabric. So this is the super huge bustle in 1885. But there is something different happening with the corset. So I haven't really paid attention to the corset for a while because it's been relatively the same. It began to soften in the early 1800s, and then it just turned right back into this thing. Well, I'll show you in a few slides what it looks like. So they called this bustle, this is bigger than it ever was before. They called it the lobster tail.
Oh,
That's actually a photograph, which I am just fascinated with the fact that in 1890, we have photographs of what these women look like, no longer just the drawings.
wow. They actually went back here in the 1890s. They went back to the old style again with the bustle.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They went back to the bustle and the sleeves, the leg of mutton sleeve that we saw in the 1840s. It was in style again. And, you know, if you think about it, well, that's not so unusual. Like today, they're wearing 70s bell bottoms. And how many years ago was that? You know, so sure, in 40 years, it could come back in. But notice how narrow her waist is.
No, I've noticed, because my waist, no matter how slim I am, I no longer have a waist.
No, we don't, because we didn't wear corsets since we were 4 years old. If you
Right.
wear, and I'm going to show you lots of pictures of what happens to their bones to make that waist that small, which we could not possibly do, and you wouldn't want to do it. So
No.
another, I'm sorry, old text slide. but here's somebody who did research on it, Rebecca Gibson, and she says it was expected. Everyone had to wear a corset, and she did research on female remains of women who were living around that time in the 200-year period then, till 1900. And she found that their ribs and their spines were deformed. So they were flattened, and I'm going to show you pictures of it. They were overlapping each other, and they were angled so that because there's long-term pressure on them since they started wearing corsets when they were little kids, and then they kept wearing it so that their bones, as they grew, their bones grew in a deformed way.
Wow.
Like the Chinese foot binding.
That's right. That's the same thing. And if that could happen where they had the little 3-inch feet, you can imagine this very easily could happen with a corset. So, and of courses were not only fashionable, they were considered very necessary for your morals. I don't really know why, but you know, if that's true, you're going to wear a corset. And pregnant women also wore corsets, even though, as I say here, they damage the uterus, they damage the ovaries and the fetus. This is a maternity corset. And then there's the one for the child. Like I said, this little child was what, 3 years old, 4 years old maybe, wearing a corset. And there's a nursing corset. So, and then this next slide, these are all the unique symptoms. This one list of symptoms here is it consists of 42 symptoms that are related to corseting. So if you wear, or especially those who wear bad corsets. Can you read that?
Yeah.
Accidents, compression of the brachial plexus, crumpling of the breasts, and diverse maladies of the lymph nodes or the mammary glands, pressing down.
Horrible, horrible.
Yeah, just very bad things. Congestion in the upper genitals, difficulty using the muscles because you don't use the muscles. So then if you don't use something, you use it or lose it. If you don't use them, you can't use them anymore. Ulcers, indigestion, nausea, vomiting, all over and over, all this stuff. And then really terrible things. You know, if you're pregnant, there was a disposition towards abortion, not abortion, they called it abortion, but miscarriage is really what it was, and hemorrhaging. So, and now you want to see what the ribs look like? You're not going to like this. Can you see that?
Yeah.
On the right is what your ribs should look like. On the left is a deformed thorax because of the corset. So you see they're all pushed inward and they're all pushed forward, Look at here, I'll use my cursor again. So the front bone is supposed to be a nice wide angle here with the bottom ribs that attach to it. And here, all pushed down.
Yeah. From being compressed like that.
Yep, since they were little kids. And there's an x-ray. Again, the normal appearance is on the left. And this is a photograph of a skeleton of a woman who was 23, showing how her ribs were distorted. And that's why her waist was small.
Right.
The ribs, they didn't take ribs out, they just pushed them in. And that's why they had to wear corsets every day to get this to happen. And this is what your innards look like.
Oh.
Yeah. All your organs had to go somewhere. So where did they go? They pushed them down. That's your intestines and everything. Internal organs move down below the corset. And you had to keep wearing the corset because your muscles weren't going to work anymore to hold up your body if you didn't put that corset on. It was like your external exoskeleton, like a lobster, really. So then there was this dress reform movement in the 1850s and 60s. They started being concerned about women's health. They started talking about it, and they felt like maybe it was the result of the male conspiracy to make women subservient. So, which, yeah, I think maybe it was. So, and they wanted some some people wanted women to be more comfortable, so they invented the S-bend corset. Okay, this is what it looked like.
Oh, say,
For better health, by a woman who was a gynecologist, and she said it's better health. And you see how that woman is leaning forward? Okay, here's a wonderful slide. The old style, she's straight up and down, although sloping shoulders. The new style, leaning forward, and her backside is sticking out and has padding for a little help. So not only now does she have a corset that pushes her forward, and if she said, the person who designed this, it puts less pressure on the abdomen, but it puts more pressure on the back. So this is the Gibson Girl corset. So did you ever hear the Gibson Girl? Okay, so I'll tell you what that's all about. So they still had the busk in the center front, and it pushed the pelvis back, pushed the bust forward. So women's bodies actually look like that. Like that woman is not moving her body forward. That is what the corset is doing to her. Also known as the Edwardian corset. Look how small her waist is. 18-inch waist. That's how the dresses looked. So it claims to keep your organs in their normal places, but of course women's organs were already moved around, and I don't really think there was any room for their organs underneath that corset. So this is what it did to the body. So the Edwardian is the new S-bend corset, and the hourglass corset was the old one. So the hourglass is on the left, and the new one you see the arrows here, the arrows going through the hips. It pushes the abdomen down and the push out and the breast forward. So this next slide is the Gibson Girl. So she was a model. Her name was Camille Clifford, and she originally was drawn by Charles Dana Gibson wearing her S-bend corset. This is his drawing of her and her hair, and he made her much thinner than she actually was. And she became famous, and this is her wearing her corset and a dress over it. That's Camille Clifford. She was just an actress, but she looked perfect. This is the proportions that they thought were absolutely perfect. And of course, that was the influence for everybody.
right, right. But then when you take that off, it's like, she must explode.
I would imagine it would be,
Surprise!
yeah,
My
very, very painful. This is how she had to sit because you're wearing a corset. This is how she had to lie down on the sofa because she's wearing a corset.
Why they would lay down like that?
She
Really?
can't sit normally.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it started the powder pigeon. Did you ever hear the powder pigeon look?
No.
That was in the early 1900s, where they emphasized the breast forward tush back look with that the fabric, a big ball of fabric from the neck down to the waist. That's the powder pigeon look. And here's a photograph of some women with the powder pigeon look.
That's right. I've seen that. Yes.
Yep. To me, they look like telephone operators,
Yes.
right? I don't know if they were, but they
Yeah,
feel that way.
good look.
Yep.
Pink dress is pretty though.
Yes, it is. Very pretty. But the side view is still powder pigeon. So now there are changes happening with this is the Salin Perfect Form combination bust improver, because it was all about health, women's health, sensibly, and the corset. So it expands the lungs and strengthens the heart and stomach.
Oh,
That's what they said. Yep. So there you go. There's an ad. And you see what happens with her body, breast forward, very tiny waist. Here, I'll keep putting my cursor on the wrong picture. Mono bosom. This was called a mono bosom, powder pigeon mono bosom, and very tiny waist and very large backside. And then we are beginning to see the garters because we're beginning to see stocking. And they're held up by garters, of course, which we did when we were kids. Do you remember wearing garter belts?
Yeah.
Yep.
People used to wear girdles back in the 50s,
Yes, and I have pictures of them here, of course.
and they
That's-
had garters and they were tight.
Yes, they were. They were very tight.
Yeah.
Yep, and that was, at least they weren't boned, but they were still changing our bodies to fit the fashion.
Right.
So
right.
then the thin, this was a problem. Are you thin? Is that your problem? Fill out your back hips and give them shape with my Parisian perfect form. So actually, I'm finding that that is a style right now where women are buying things, undergarments with padding to round out their backsides and make them bigger.
Yes, I think they are. Yes, I was reading that something by Caitlyn Jenner, who came out a few years ago, and she said she had to get now that she was a woman, padded underwear. So
Yeah.
I guess now.
Yeah. Yeah, she had to get the padding. That's what she does, in case you ever wondered how she gets it. So this is their concept of a perfect bust. That's the powder pigeon look and a tiny little waist. When you don't have the perfect monobosom, you can wear this. Because nobody has a monobosom. So they called it nature's rival. Okay, so now look at this dancer. This is amazing.
Oh, for God's sake, look at that.
So she's standing the way the corset made women stand, but she is not wearing a corset. She's standing that way because that was the fashion, exaggerated, but still that was the fashion. And she called herself La Sylph. She was Edith Limbell Langerfeld. She was an exotic dancer. And she danced from the 1890s when the Gibson Girl was the prominent standard of beauty all the way up till the 1930s. And she danced in the Folie Bergère. She did the Hoochie Coochie, which I don't know if we know what it is, but it sounds like we know what it is. The Hoochie Coochie dance, and she did vaudeville. And of course, the police were always watching her shows to see what she was going to actually do. But she was a contortionist.
She looks like she may be double jointed, actually.
But yes, she was.
Easy to do. I mean, not everybody can do that.
No, nobody can do that. I don't know who can do that. Yeah. So I stuck her in because I thought, this is amazing. This is life imitating art, if you want to call the corset art. So, and as I said before, it was very important for you to wear a corset because your morals were decrepit if you didn't wear a corset. But that feeling, that concept kind of began to end at the beginning of the 20th century. And I think that's because at the same time, this is when women were fighting for suffrage. Again, they started in the 1850s. We did not get the right to vote, but we were doing it again in the early 1900s. And things were changing. We were allowed to show our ankles, maybe a little bit more bare skin. But in 1893 in New Zealand, there's a picture of women who were voting. They got the vote in 1893. So there's a woman on the left who wants to ride her bicycle, but she's wearing that ridiculous skirt. How's she going to do that? So maybe wishing she had some bloomers. And finally, this is what the corsets look like. Those are all undergarments in 1910 all the way up to 1920, and not boning. Actually, just maybe stiffer fabric, but not boning. And then something started happening with fashion, and the slender look came in.
Now it's changed to the slim look.
Very slim, yes. Still a monobosom, but very slender. So there you go. This is the 1910s. When you see that, I don't know what you think of, but I think of the Titanic, which was 1912, I think. And that's what they were wearing then. but gaining a little freedom because now their skirts only came down above the foot, maybe up to the ankle, not down to the floor anymore. So they had to invent the hobble skirt, which they called the speed limit skirt, so they could still keep women down. It was literally a belt around your knees.
That's
Yep. And that's a woman who's wearing the hobble skirt where it looks like pants, but it's a skirt that's very tight down around her ankles. But I love her hat. I really love her hat.
me too. I love hats.
Yeah, me too. And notice lovely flowers around her waist. I think she looks great.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
looks very dapper.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah. So this is what was going on underneath in 1915. The skirts are definitely continuing to rise, and the corsets got longer, including a slip. And actually, sometimes they were separate. And I remember wearing a slip always when I was a little girl. You had to wear a slip. So when we were little,
I
it was
remember.
full slip. But then they came out with a half slip in the 60s.
I have slips. Right?
Yeah, which was
And I
freedom.
still have them in my top drawer.
I still have them too.
At the back again. No reason to wear them.
No, why are you saving it?
I have no idea. I must be the oddest things. I don't know.
I don't either, but I have 3 of them. I don't know. I cannot get rid of it. I
Me
don't know.
too. I take it out and look at it once in a while. Oh no, I don't need it. I put it away.
Yep. I don't know if you remember.
The one's a half slip.
Yeah. And do you remember when you went into town, you had to wear gloves? Gloves on
Oh, yeah. Now that I'm older and my hands are not very good looking, I wish we were wearing gloves again.
your Yes. Well, I was a little child, and it was like the thing to do when going downtown, my little white cotton gloves.
Oh, yes.
Remember them? They were beautiful.
I remember too.
Yeah. So now look what appears in 1917, the brassiere. So I think this is amazing. They actually had an ad for it. It doesn't have boning, it just has a little uplift. But
And
it's still,
we're getting back to those again. They call them camisoles.
yes, exactly. This is the beginning. It's like a proto camisole. Like they didn't get to that yet, but it was coming. So now there were all sorts of things happening with the waistline, and then we'll see what's underneath it in a minute. So now the waistline is dropping. So in 1915, it's just a little below the natural waist. And 1918, still a little bit below the waist. That's what they were wearing underneath. Notice there's no corset, there's no top. It's just like a girdle.
Wow.
Yep, and it has a garter belt. And this is underneath. On top of that, they wore the powder pigeon look. They have to have a corset on the top that was separated from the girdle on the bottom. So here they have the pink is the girdle, and then on top is a corset cover. The white, so it's 2 garments.
So many colors.
So many things. So it's separate. You see 2 pieces. Something that's sort of like a bra on the top with a corset with garter belts.
Wow.
And there's the waistline, still at the same place in 1923, just a little at the hip. 1924, a little longer. And all of a sudden, no waistline, 1925. Disappeared. And the boyish look came in.
And women suddenly got very slim.
They did. They had to push everything down. No more monobosom, no more powder pigeon look. They had to be like a boyish look. I don't know how they all looked so flat. Yep.
Now, frankly speaking, I'm more comfortable with that look.
With this look? Oh.
Yeah, with the flat look, yes. Slim.
Yeah. Yes. This actually looks like you could wear some of these clothes today.
Yeah.
They feel quite modern. And this is what they wore underneath. They had things to flatten you out instead of pushing you up, and they all had garters on them. There they are. So bust flattening, that's what they were. They were bust flattening bandeau. And you could get just the top part. It's like a bra, but it's meant to flatten you instead of, giving you something. And you could get a set of 3 for 69 cents. That's Clara Bow. Have you heard of Clara Bow?
Miss Fletcher.
She was in 1928, before we were born. She was the biggest thing and the ideal boyish look. So she had some kind of bust flattener and she was perfectly straight. No hips, of course. No, certainly no backside. So that's what the brasiers look like. For stout women, they had to restrain any fleshiness wearing their brasiers. Again, flattening them out. And here's how you could reduce your weight. You wear rubber and you sweat off the fat.
Oh my goodness. That's like the girdle was rubber, I think, wasn't it?
The stitching had rubber in it. I remember that. Yes, it was elastic.
Yeah. Now they wear spandex. That's like rubbery, isn't it?
No, spandex is not rubber anymore. It's actually it's a synthetic. But rubber is a natural material, actually. But spandex is much more comfortable. If you have cotton with a little spandex in it, it's not sweaty. It's actually very comfortable and stretchy. So there is an unstructured brassiere, and it's not meant to flatten the bust. So this is a change. Unboned. These are very strange looking. Comfortable for sports and dancing. And they always have the garters. And then, oh no, the lordosis back line. You know what that means? That's your backside. But we had to hide that.
They had to flatten it, no backside.
Yes.
Well,
So-
when I see the movies of the 30s,
Yes.
not have backsides. None of the dancers,
They don't.
judges, they were all flat.
They were all flat. This is what she looked like in the 30s. I
They
don't
were
know who they-
slim, very slim.
Yeah, very slim. So this says, Mother, will I stick out and back like you when I grow up? Oh my God, it's the worst thing.
How did they get rid of that though? Oh my God.
Very heavy, tight fabrics. That's how they got rid of it. They were wearing girdles.
Girdles.
Yep, there
Put
it
the
is.
girdle in. Yeah.
There you go. So this is without anything. She's got her bra and just little tap pants on the left. This is an ordinary garment, but this special, wonderful Spirella garment totally
Yeah.
flattened her out.
Yeah.
That's how they did it.
Right.
So, do you think corsets are a thing of the past? What do you think? What do you think,
So
Naomi?
nowadays they bring everything back.
What do you think, Naomi?
I'm just wondering, I mean, I was never into fashion and all of a sudden you have to this. No, you have to that. No, you have to this. No, you have to that. Like I don't play that game. And it's frightening. It's horrifying. Oh,
It is really.
It is, but I haven't even shown you all the really horrifying things. I still have a few more pictures of what we're doing these days.
oh,
So-
I mean, people having surgery, having fake breasts put in and having breasts enlarged and breasts shrunk
Sure.
down and injected with Botox and with some kind of a filler in the lips. It's like, what crazy.
That's for sure. So there we have Sophia Loren. Didn't we think she was gorgeous? She's wearing a corset.
Yeah.
There she is as a blonde. And this is like in the past year. That's Beyonce and other actresses.
Rihanna,
Rihanna, not Beyonce.
who is usually quite heavy. Here she's very slim.
Yes, and Kim Kardashian.
Kardashian has the biggest hips I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I wonder
She
about
doesn't
those
try
hips.
to make them smaller either. She's comfortable exhibiting herself.
Don't you think she's wearing padding?
Pardon me?
Don't you think she has padding on her hips to make them bigger?
Oh, would she do that? Do you think?
Yes.
My God, she's
Yes.
big enough.
Yes,
I
but
think
because They sell garments with the padding, and some women are buying it to make themselves look bigger. And then, do you remember this?
This is Madonna with her pointed
Yeah.
ones, right?
Yep, she wore that Jean-Paul Gaultier corset.
Right, right.
And this designer has recently designed this new corset based on the original historical designs from the 16th to the 20th century, flattening out your breast.
Oh, wow.
That's another corset designer going totally offbeat. And Dua Lipa wearing a corset. She's gorgeous. There's Kim Kardashian. She calls it a waist trainer.
But
And
I've seen her nude. They showed pictures of her nude many times, and she has those great pictures.
okay, I'm glad you're telling me that because I didn't really know.
Yeah, yeah, she does.
Do you know this person?
No.
She's a striptease artist, Dita Von Teese. She calls herself a glaminatrix.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And you can buy these currently
She-
from Miss Leather online.
She's wearing one of those straight jackets.
Yeah. And then here's the Spanx. You see, this is what I'm talking about. The padding on the back side.
Oh, wow. Look at
There
that.
it is. Yep.
You know, I knew of somebody who went to Brazil to have her butt injected with fat or something. It's like some people are having it removed, some people are having it put in.
Wow.
They're crazy,
I
crazy.
know. And even men.
Why in the world are they wearing it now? Oh, they're getting so weird.
Yep. They have lots of choices. So this man in the middle, he's wearing that old fashioned. He must have been wearing this corset a long time to get his ribs to go in like that.
Yeah, that doesn't look too healthy, really.
No, it really doesn't. I think we're coming down to the end. Skims, which is reasonable. You know, if you have rolls that you want to flatten out, they have it for women, they have it for men, and it's not as brutal maybe as a corset. And that's the last slide.
Oh, that was great fun.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
A romp through the world of corsets and then a little bit of remembering what we used to wear.
Oh,
I remember my great aunt and her girdle. A girdle. Oh,
Mhm.
girdle. I remember the girdle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
We
didn't get to really wear it. I think I wore it very fleetingly, and then it was gone. It was like, I didn't wear it anymore. It was just when I was out working, I think. And it didn't last. Then they changed it. People weren't wearing other stuff. Although
yeah, but
I suspect there are still people that wear girdles.
quite possibly. Why would you stop if you're used to it? You know, and it's what makes you the way you want to look. I remember when I was growing up, my grandma wearing it, and she never stopped, and she
Yeah,
lived till 1989. She still wore her girdle.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
who's deciding what our bodies should look like? It's just
I know.
play with these people. But one thing I noticed now
It's
that I
the
find
designers.
well, I think we have more say in it than the designers at this point. It comes up from the streets. What were you saying, Naomi?
people nowadays wear the most clingy pants, and you can see every inch of their backside. It's like bizarre. It's like they want to show their butt like it's naked. I mean, and I was in Puerto Rico, these bathing suits where they didn't cover anything. They just covered the crack, and that was it. And the rest of their butt was hanging out. Like, is this for real?
Yeah, that's a Brazilian. That's actually not new.
That's the new look. My granddaughters wear those suits. They're college age.
Yeah, I would think it's uncomfortable, but then maybe I'm old fashioned.
Yeah, I think it must be very uncomfortable. Plus, I don't really like it. Like I tell my granddaughter, less is more. You don't go around showing your body like that. I don't think that's attractive. I don't find that attractive. Maybe I'm
So-
out of style or something, but I don't find that attractive.
So you don't mean showing you mean showing less is
Showing
better.
less is more, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everything will come back. I'm waiting to see if, like you said, I will wait to see if the bustle will come back.
Yeah, I do too. Now I'm waiting for the bustle. This I have to see. I'm not wearing that, that's for sure.
No? Have you seen The Gilded Age? You know that TV show that was on last year?
No, you mean a movie? Was it?
It's a television series. It's about the 1890s, about Mrs. Astor, and that's old money, and the new money, like the Vanderbilts coming in and trying to take place in society. But the garments are gorgeous. The dresses,
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
beautiful. And they had bustles and gorgeous dresses.
Yeah, they are gorgeous. Some of those outfits are just lovely.
Yeah.
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 I could understand how people would get into that. I definitely understand that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. Yeah.
Yes, I-
See my puppy sleeves?
Yeah. Yeah, they're puffy.
There are little tiny pads in here too.
Oh, you have a little
I thought
pad.
it was so cute. I loved it. Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's your little leg of mutton sleeve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I always liked blazers. I found them so comfortable, but now they just look ridiculous. Nobody wears blazers now.
Oh, no, I wear a blazer every day when I go to Parsons to
Oh
teach.
yeah, I like blazers. I like blazers. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right out of the closet. I just found them so comfortable. The pockets, everything.
Yeah, it's great. That's what I wear to school. I just really like it. I feel like it pulls my outfit together. Like my outfit's not much of an outfit, but as soon as I put on the blazer, I feel like it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
professional.
They're
Yeah.
great. Over skirt, over pants.
Sure. Yeah. Even over skinny leggings that show my whole tush.
Well, they're getting away from the skinny jeans. Do you notice? Now
Yes.
it's big leg jeans. Thank God. I can't stand those skinny jeans.
Yes. Well, but I'll tell you what the girls are also wearing in school. They wear a jacket and little shorts that are so small that you don't see anything below the jacket. It's called the naked look.
Oh no.
Yeah. So you don't
Or
know,
the
you think they're naked.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm
I
sick
think I saw my granddaughter go out with that look one day. Yeah. When she was back from school. Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. So Maurice, did you enjoy our conversation about it?
It was wonderful. One for the ages. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, we all can relate to all of those garments. I mean, maybe not the bustles, but our version of the corset, the garter belts and the girdles and everything.
All those clothes on one body. Oh my heavens.
It's quite a chore. It's quite a, yeah, I can't imagine having to put something like that on. Those waistlines are just, wow.
Oh,
That's,
painful.
Yeah.
men doing it too is very, very weird. It's out there. I've never seen a man wear, an
Yeah, I don't know why,
something like
you
that.
don't have to. If you don't have to, then why would you want to do that?
No, yeah. One of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, yeah. So that's about it. And if you enjoyed this, then maybe Maurice will find some more people a little later in the year and do it again. Or certainly I'll have a fashion talk if you two are interested in it. We're thinking. I think we have a possible plan to do history of the bathing suit in the spring.
Oh wow.
That sounds good.
That should be
And
fun.
then we could discuss the suits they're wearing these days.
Of course, of
Thanks.
course. And I still connect everything like that to women's rights because it absolutely was a part. They had the fashion police on the beach arresting women who wore bathing suits that were too small.
Oh wow.
And then they had the fashion police on the beach just a couple years ago, just like 2019, in France, arresting women whose bathing suits were too big, who were wearing they're wearing long sleeves and long leggings. It wasn't a burqa, but it was covering them up. And then, France said, nope, you have to wear bikinis.
Yeah, I've seen that. Was it the burkini? Is that what you're talking about? The sort of
Yes.
Muslim
Yeah.
appropriate bathing
That's
suit?
right.
Yeah.
That's right. But meanwhile, it makes perfect sense. I don't wear that, but I want to wear SPF shirts over my bathing suit to keep me warm. Like, when you go in the water and you're surfing, and you wear a whole wetsuit, it's just like that, but I'm sitting on the beach. I want to cover up from the sun.
Yeah.
So, imagine being arrested because you're wearing something at the fashion police something that you wear, but that happens.
Well, thanks everyone for tonight. We had a great talk, and hope we can do this again really soon. Thanks both
Great.
for coming. Thanks again for a wonderful lecture, Marcie.
Thank you
And I
very
look forward to
much.
having you back soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.